Hello, I am going to be broaching the subject of critical race theory. So this is going to be fun, isn't it? I certainly won't be able to deal with this in just one video. But what happened was one of my subscribers wrote underneath my last but one video, I can't find it anymore, I'm sorry, or I would have actually read out the comment. But he asked a question which seemed entirely reasonable to me, and I thought I should give this some more thought. He said, what exactly is critical race theory? So I thought, that's a good question, and I don't know. I mean, I thought I knew, but I should check it out. So I did. And do you know what? I'm having a dickens of a time finding out what it is, because it turns out that critical race theory is anything you want it to be. Well, there are a few points, but they shift as well. So I found something finally that more or less defines it, but it doesn't actually, because it says here, here are some key tenets, which means, you know, there are some points that this person has taken out, but that doesn't mean that's actually critical race theory. So I'm not going to do that. I'll do that probably in the next video. I'll go through those key tenets. But what I will do is give you my overview of how I see critical race theory in operation. And basically, it seems to be that critical race theory is everything as seen through the lens of race and power structures. Now, we all know what happens when you look at things through one lens. Obviously, hang on a minute. Yeah, here we are. I knew I had this here. This is a lens. I'm going to hold the lens in front of my face. Now, all I can see is the camera in front of me, and it's very distorted, and if I'm holding this the right distance, you'll probably see part of my face upside down, which is probably going to be very weird and creepy. But the point is, it's distorted. First of all, I can't see the rest of me. From my point of view, I can't see the rest of the world around me. All I can see is the post that's holding up the camera. And that's, you know, like that thing about the blind men looking at an elephant, or rather not being able to see an elephant, and one touches the leg, feels the leg and says, oh, well, an elephant resembles a tree trunk, and the other one grabs the trunk and says, no, 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 it resembles a snake. And somebody else, I don't know what, grabs the ear and says, no, no, it's more like a large leathery bird. So, you know, that's the problem. When you specialise in something, you see the whole world in terms of that. Now, if you're a doctor, you see the world in terms of sick people. And if you're a good doctor, how you can help them. But to the disadvantage of other things, probably. And if you're a critical race theorist, then you've got this idea about race and power structures, and that's all you see. And of course, obviously nature, or God, didn't think it was a good idea to have just one view of something. Well, that's why we've got two eyes, isn't it? And so, many religious people will say that's why there's man and woman, because that's two points of view, and so on. So anyway, let's get back to critical race theory. Certainly race does play a part in our attitudes. It's like that with everything. If there were a race of white people who were like, I don't know what, very, very small or very, very tall, they would stand out in this society, then they would be marked out as a separate group. And you make assumptions about these groups. Let's see, if I were in Chicago, for instance, and a young black man in a hoodie was walking towards me in a deserted street, I would be a little bit nervous. I'd be a bit more careful. Not because of his race, but because statistically more young men of his race in Chicago are involved in violence of some sorts. We have the statistics to tell us. On the other hand, I can give you a very good example of this. I was driving my car through Hampstead Garden suburb, and I was driving through a road called Winnington Road. There are some really splendid houses there. It's a very moneyed area. And there was a group of black men, very well dressed, obviously Africans, and they were in some sort of trouble at the side of the road. They were sort of milling about. There were about 4 or 5 of them, and they looked a bit lost and everything. So I stopped the car. It didn't occur to me that there was any problem there. I stopped the car and said, "What's the matter?" And one of them said, "Oh, well, we were supposed to get this driver and he's gone somewhere else and I've got to get home." So I said, "Well, do you want a lift?" And he said he was just down the road, but Winnington Road's a very long road. So I said, "Do you want a lift?" And he got in the car, and I drove him down Winnington Road to his place, and he got out, he gave me his card. He said, "If you need any help," I looked at the card, turned out he was a banker, and he was a Nigerian. Yeah, I was right about that. And he said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" So I said, "Well, do you have any free samples down the bank?" And he laughed, and then he went. That's all. So it didn't occur to me to feel worried. But it would if I were in Chicago and I saw a group of black youths in a similar situation on a deserted road. I wouldn't stop. I'd be nervous. People work on statistics, don't they? You'd be a fool not to. Anyway, back to critical race theory. The other problem with critical race theory is that people use this lens to redefine words, and they become dishonest. I mean, if I said the whole world, looked like that, upside down, and from your point of view and from my point of view, just like the post that the camera is balanced on, well, that would be dishonest. That's just a focused view on a certain part of the world, but it doesn't take into account the whole world, the whole situation, the context. Well, the electric light, the desk that somebody made, the screen that somebody invented, it doesn't take that into account at all. And people get dishonest with definitions because they find it's to their advantage. It puts other people on the wrong foot, and so it gives you a way of exerting your own power over people. So you could say critical race theory is not about other people's power, it's about your use of words to gain some power for yourself. Let's take a word like misogyny. Misogyny actually means a hatred of women, but nowadays people use it in all sorts of contexts that have nothing to do with a hatred of women. It's just somebody who has a different opinion about women than you have. So it used to be if a man stood aside to let a woman ahead in a queue or opened a door for her, that used to be called respect for women. Now, misogyny. It's a great way for a woman of, wishing to make a point to insult somebody. And, what do you think, I'm weak or something like that. You can regard that as true if a man lets a woman ahead. Sorry, just a minute, I'm cutting this off. Right, that's my phone. It has my horse neighing on it. Okay, I'm sorry about that. And she's coming round to visit, so I might have to break this again to let her in. We'll see how I go on. So you see, we can regard that as true. Women were considered weaker. They were considered not so able to stand for long periods, so you let them ahead to save their blushes or whatever. And I don't see anything. Things have changed since then, obviously, but you can look at it that way. However, it's not a whole thing. The same man who might open the door for you might be very happy to have you as his doctor, You know, people don't have straight down the line opinions, and that's the other thing. You think if somebody shows an attitude with which you disagree in one respect, then they're going to be completely at odds with you in every other respect. Well, that's not true, because people have varying attitudes to varying things. And the particularly difficult thing about critical race theory is that it insists that everything is bound up in everything else. So, as I said, people who have one set of ideas have to have matching ideas in another direction. So, yeah, statistically, again, some people who think in one way do tend to think in one way. So CRT has a point, but not necessarily. And you are not giving people the benefit of the doubt if you don't take this into account. And the other thing is that critical race theory, that's what it is. It's a theory. It's not a proven fact. But people have lost sight of that. Critical race theory is now used not as a theory, but as a scientifically proven iron law, a lens. We know that this lens is going to distort things in a certain way every time. And so we know that, but not with people's brains. That doesn't work the same way. And so when we've got this, it's a law. When we're thinking of it as a law, justifies all sorts of extreme attitudes. And these attitudes are used by people generally who want to make a profit out of the discomfort of other people. So that's my first talk about critical race theory. It is a means by which others can get power over you. It didn't start out like that. But that's what it's become, and that's its danger, and that is why we have to fight it. There's no problem with helping people to see omissions in their historical view of themselves, but it is dangerous, destructive, and dishonest to tell people that because their ancestors worked in one way, then they have some sort of original stain, and that lens is in front of them all the time, 24/7, for as long as they exist. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share, share, share.